Hello, friends. Welcome to another Expert Talk. I'm Ilse Maubert, editor at the Logistics World, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to three guests who are going to talk about last mile logistics in Mexico and Latin America. We're going international today. We have first Manuel Albornoz from Santiago, Chile. He has 30 plus years of experience in public and private sectors, as well as organizations, and he has worked in various leadership roles, supporting decision-making in the management of logistics operations, strategic management of transport, and traffic engineering projects. He has a master's degree in logistics and supply chain management from Cranfield University. Manuel, welcome.
Thank you, Ilse, and thank you, the Logistics World, for having us today. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Joining us from the United Kingdom, we have Denise Julian, who is an associate professor in the Logistics Procurement and Supply Chain Management Group at Cranfield University. She is interested in sustainable and circular supply chains and is an expert in the challenges facing food supply chains. Hello, Denise.
Hi everyone. I'm really happy to be here, dialing in from the UK to connect with my Latin American friends and colleagues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Last but not least, let me introduce you to Cheyenne Telfer, a logistics and supply chain management professional from Trinidad and Tobago, who currently resides in Washington, D.C. She has worked with global Fortune 500 companies, unicorn startups, and small and medium-sized enterprises. She also holds a Master's of Science degree in Logistics and Supply Chain Management from Cranfield University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, Manuel, Denise, and Cheyenne, thanks for being here with us today to talk about this hot topic about logistics and last mile delivery. What a great panel to have this conversation with. I'm very excited. And I want to begin with this expert talk by setting the context of where we are today in terms of last mile logistics. So we all know what had happened during the pandemic, but what is your assessment of home deliveries in the short or medium term, or even in the following post-pandemic stages? And I would also like to know, what do you think would be the same for the whole countries or within the regions, or the behavior will differ from country to country? If anyone wants to kick off this conversation, please begin.
Okay, I'll start. That's a big question, Ilse, but it's a really important one. So, I mean, we all know the statistics show us that during the pandemic, e-commerce really just, the rate of growth of it was phenomenal, driven by, people needing to buy things and not being able to go in the shops. What we think really is that post-COVID, things are not going to go back to the levels that they were before the pandemic. In other words, lots of people have entered into that e-commerce sphere, and they've realized, actually, we really like this. So we're going to continue using e-commerce to buy our groceries or to do different types of purchases online. So we don't expect that it's going to reverse completely back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's amazing, but what that means for last mile delivery is we've, in parallel with that, to support that growth in the e-commerce, you've had a huge growth as well in last mile delivery and all the supply chains and the logistics behind actually delivering all of those millions and millions and millions of parcels to all of the customers and the consumers out there who've ordered online. And so that's why it's really important what we're talking about today, because I think a lot of companies reacted to the pandemic and scaled up their e-commerce platforms and made rapid changes in their supply chain to support that. But I think it was almost a response in a crisis. And I think now what companies are having to think about is, okay, this is not this looks like it's going to be permanent. Now, how do we go back and make our supply chains and our whole logistics in the background to support that last mile delivery more efficient and, you know, achieve lower costs? Because there's a lot that we did in that rapid response that now needs to be fixed and optimized and made more efficient for a more steady state. Manuel, I don't know if you want to join in with your ideas of how you think this is going to work across the region.
Yes, of course. I think that you made an excellent introduction to the subject, and one should highlight that e-commerce have made the last mile delivery today more put pressure on it in terms of e-commerce needs to be fulfill customer expectations. So it has become more complex. Last mile deliveries before will really had to do a simple thing of distribute, but today it has to fulfill customer expectations, so has become more complex. And because of that, I think when you think about that, how it's going to look like in the post-pandemic stages, difficult to say. First, the economists, they're not sure if this is going to be a U recovery, a W recovery, or whatever shape it takes. We more tend to think that a scheduled and synchronized process will not be the case. It will be more a collection of unexpected closures in different urban areas, in different times. And in Latin America, we are used to deal with these sudden changes. But I think this time, we in the logistics sector, for the last mile delivery, we will have to build a resilience, responsiveness, just to be able to be successful and also reaping the benefits of the recovery, because this can be a good opportunity to go back to pre-pandemic levels, but also to build this capacity of using technology really. There is also huge opportunities for investment in warehousing and fulfillment centers.
I think
close to main cities.
Yeah, that's a great point, because certainly in Europe, what you see huge investment in new warehousing space and fulfillment centers. And exactly as you said, you see around the big cities, the mega cities, a network of fulfillment centers, you know, on the outskirts, because it goes back to, you were talking about how we work with those end customers and what their expectation is, which, I mean, we talk a lot about customer centricity at the moment. So if you could imagine all of your customers at the center of our supply chain, of a supply chain, an organization's supply chain, and they're interacting in different ways with that organization, right? So sometimes it's through an e-commerce platform, sometimes they may go to the store, but we need to be coherent. And you're seeing organizations having to innovate even in the structure of their supply chains to be able to figure out, how do we actually service and you know, provide the service that we're promising? What is our value proposition to our customers, and how are we doing that in a coherent, aligned way across these very complex platforms as we see developing? Yeah, so that's a great point.
Yeah, there's no question that logistics, well, last mile logistics, it's just a part of this whole chain, you know, this whole value chain, and that everything needs to be optimized so that this last part can be optimized as well.
I think probably Shai, you're the expert in giving us some ideas about that.
Yes, I would love to hear Shai mention perhaps what are the challenges for companies to have this efficiency in the last miles and to even be more eco-friendly, perhaps?
Sure. One of the big challenges, especially in Latin America, for last mile excellence is traffic congestion. And it's usually caused by poorly maintained or fragmented transport infrastructure. So in 2019, Bogota, Lima, Mexico City, and Recife were among the 50 most congested cities in the world. The traffic in those cities was so severe that on average, it extended travel times by over 50%. And so this is, yeah, it's a huge number, and it's a big barrier to efficiency. And so in addition to the lost time, fuel, and labor that is spent in traffic, these are wasted resources that last mile operators could be using and directing towards instead investments in technology and improving their processes. So it really is a detriment to the competitiveness of the industry as a whole. Another big challenge is rework, which is caused by failed deliveries. In the UK, operators reported that 30% of deliveries that went to homes failed on the first attempt. And it's a huge cost. And in Latin America, we don't have a statistic for this metric, but it's something to take note of given the growing presence of gated communities in the landscape of the region. And gated communities usually come with additional, time-consuming security protocols that delivery personnel have to traverse. And this increases the impact of delivery failure. Another challenge is lack of postal service development. Well-developed postal services have far-reaching delivery networks and the infrastructure and ability to handle large volumes of shipments reliably, making them a really good partner for last-mile fulfillment. A good example is the United States Postal Service, which performs a significant amount of deliveries for e-commerce giant Amazon. Now, in Latin America, Brazil and Colombia have fairly developed and far-reaching and reliable postal services. But unfortunately, this isn't true for many of the other countries in the region. And a last challenge that I want to mention that Denise and Manuel hinted at before is customer expectations have been increasing in the sense with this growth of e-commerce. And there's a conflict between customer expectations and what operators want. So customers want fast, cheap, or free delivery and short delivery windows. They want to know that exact 2-hour time span or even less when their package is going to arrive at their homes. It makes it easier for them to plan their lives. But on the other hand, last mile operators, they need to make a profit and they would prefer longer delivery windows because it allows them to consolidate deliveries. They achieve efficiency in that way. And then by doing so, they can also optimize routes. So those are some of the major challenges that face last mile delivery in Latin America in particular.
Yeah, I'm really particularly biased toward the traffic congestion because, well, I'm also a traffic engineer. I started my career setting up the traffic control system in Santiago de Chile. So I'm really sensitive to that issue. But looking from the technology point of view, because of that traffic engineering background that I have, I think routing and scheduling software as a services enterprises today are capable of providing increased capabilities based on machine learning and AI applications to deal with congestion, and also providing real-time updates to delivery plans based on congestion. So I think this is going to be taken care of in the next years. It's not something that we should really worry so much about it, but we need to put technology in place.
I think to build on that, Manuel, because what you have is the nexus, what we're talking about. So we have organizations who are trying to supply to their customers. They may be working with logistics partners to do that. But then we have cities and we have the city council. And we know we're talking a lot now about smart cities and about, a lot of Internet of Things technology going into cities, which will then have to communicate. So again, even agreeing global standards for some of those types of technologies and how they communicate and interact with each other so that, we have to think of this as a system as opposed to optimizing individual little pieces of it. Because again, something like what we're talking about, especially if we're looking at how do we do this in these big, complex megacities, we know one of the key skills or one of the key approaches is collaboration. Collaboration between competitors, collaboration between different parts of the supply chain, collaboration, public and private, you know, so when we talked earlier about complexity, man, is this complex on so many different levels, depending on how you look at it, yeah? But yeah, that's really interesting. I think technology is going to be a key enabler to help businesses really do this in a super efficient way and to differentiate themselves in the marketplace in what they're able to do and offer. So
yeah, another side to it, you mentioned city councils, so you were talking about local authorities, local governments. It's interesting to highlight that during 2020, just few advances were made in the regulatory and legal environment to enable digital trade, for example, which is the base for e-commerce, and where e-commerce actually made the last mile delivery exploded. And just some countries that already have an e-commerce strategy in place before the pandemic took measures to increase the interoperability of digital payments, for example, which is super important for easing the last mile delivery experience of people. So it's important that in close coordination with stakeholders from private sector, academia, civil society, government needs to act to build sound ecosystem by introducing long-term internet infrastructure plans, for example.
5G.
Exactly, yeah. And in that respect, 5G is coming, and probably first country that will actually have 5G, a rollout, a really fast rollout, will be Chile. So I will definitely think many startups will actually start using 5G networks for this last mile delivery implementation, technological implementation, which is interesting to look at.
I don't know, Shai, I know you have thought a lot about the different modes and the way that last mile delivery is actually done. I mean, what do you think would be the likely models that would be applied in Latin America?
In Latin America, I think we're going to see, hopefully, more use of various transport models. And again, the public sector has a big role to play in this respect as well, because we see in Bogota, where they've made cycling an integral part of their transportation planning. And it benefits all parties. So citizens benefit from every car that is taken off the road or isn't required. That results in reduced greenhouse gas emissions and improves air quality. And we have so many cities in Latin America that struggle with air quality. Mexico City, Santiago de Chile, Bogota is another one. So when the public sector in their budgets and in their transportation planning, when they include things like protected cycle paths, this same infrastructure that encourages the use of bicycles, we know that that's the same infrastructure that also encourages the use of cargo cycles by enterprises. And the main barrier to more enterprises, more companies adopting these tools to deliver their items, their packages to customers is a lack of infrastructure. So I think that's going to be something that I hope many more cities and countries take a lead on, because every delivery truck and car that we replace with a bicycle is going to reduce traffic congestion as well. And so it improves efficiency on the whole.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cities here in Europe, we're talking about shared space. Spaces, one, to make the city more attractive for the people who live there, and work there, but also that during the day, this space along the river might be used for freight, but in the evening, maybe it's used as an outdoor restaurant or a cafe. And it raises and poses lots of issues and questions and problems, but you are seeing city councils trying to think very differently about how they create an environment and address some of the challenges that we see cities have. And that links very much to congestion, which links as well, as we've been talking about with last mile delivery. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Now, I would like to hear from you. What do you recommend to design this operational strategy as a whole for the last mile? Because there are various influencing factors in the last mile. You know, the volume and frequency of the orders, if we use an outsourced service or your own fleet, technology again. So what would you recommend to our viewers?
Do you want to jump in, Denise?
I thought maybe Shai, you have a nice model that you.
Oh, you do?
Sure.
Please.
Sure. So speaking a little bit more about the factors that influence last mile delivery, really when you look at it, you see that the entire landscape of the country, the economy, unemployment rates, because unemployment rates impact labor costs, and that is a big factor for operators. Transportation infrastructure, financial inclusion, which many countries in Latin America lag in. And we've seen recently a burst in fintech innovation and startups trying to bridge that gap and create services where people who are unbanked can use services and then make e-commerce grow even further. In technological infrastructure, as I mentioned before, postal service development, the national income, the topography of the land. So all of these factors influence in different ways: route efficiency, service reliability, traffic congestion, and costs. And so when companies are designing their operational strategy, figuring out how am I going to run my last mile business and how am I going to differentiate myself, they can choose between, many of them go for a cost leadership strategy where they're using a lot of gig workers. That's also something that, and that's the kind of innovation that we've seen a lot of in the last few years. So where it's not really own employees of the company, it's more crowdsourced workers and assets. So often you have a last mile company that owns no delivery vans, no cars, no infrastructure of their own to actually carry out the deliveries, and they focus more on the platform. Then companies can also focus on differentiation. So whether or not they're going to provide superior performance in a particular way, offer white glove service to deliver customers' orders in their homes and set it up for them and make sure everything is running, and they take out the packaging so the customer doesn't have anything to worry about. That's a form of differentiation.
Because that's also a key point of differentiation when we talk about circularity and sustainability, that actually providing that additional service of taking away all the excess packaging, the old unit, it allows as well for those businesses to offer another unique value proposition, in that they're actually taking that back and hopefully putting it into a recycling, a circular sort of supply chain to reuse, refurbish, and to then resell. Yeah. So that's really, absolutely, because they're doing that, they can also bring the reverse logistics back with it. Yeah. As we talk about strategy and what we're seeing different companies doing, there's a great example recently in the last month here in the UK. Gap, everyone knows Gap, right? Announced in the UK that it was closing all of its retail stores, which is like, whoa, you're closing all your stores, like, whoa, what's going on? But And they said, no, but don't panic. We can still provide you a service, but only through our e-commerce platform. And for me, that is massive. When you have a big brand like that, actually, that I don't know if it's brave or what exactly it is, but that's a big strategic decision to decide we are only going to service this market through e-commerce platform. And we take all the complexity and all the cost of having stores out. They must be very confident that the traffic on their platform will be, they're not going to lose money from that. So it's interesting when you seek, and Manuel, I know you have an example, of course, with the small shops in Latin American stores and cities. And there's another, again, something I saw recently, and I think that what Shai was saying is it's contextual. I don't think one size fits all. I think you can look for good practices, but you have to adapt to the local context. Otherwise, it does not work. And so I read something recently about Amazon trying to get a better foothold in India. And in India, there are millions of really small stores that people in, in that neighborhood, they all go and they get every day the stuff there. And so Amazon, instead of trying to reach the individual consumer, they have decided to focus on the small owners of the owners of those small stores. And that's how they're going to work in that market. So it's actually interesting to see how they've started, it wasn't working, and they started to understand the contextual factors there and adjust how they work in that market to fit with that context. And I think maybe, Manuel, maybe there are similar examples in Latin America.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating what you can see what's happening with the last mile delivery and all the rise of the e-commerce. I think in what Shai mentioned about the explosion of fintech is something that really needs to be highlighted, because it leverages the last mile delivery. Really, it's like it's become more democratic, if you want to think about it like this. For example, in Argentina today there are 34 different digital wallets. 5 years ago there was none. So in that way, you see how many people are coming online today, are able to shop online that they were not able to shop online before. And these people, they have different expectations than those that they were used to buy online, because these people have never bought online. They didn't have a bank account. So today they can shop. And which is interesting here is like Latin America is leapfrogging this e-commerce ability. You mentioned like Gap is closing stores, but that's a process that has been going on for a long time. Many other shops in the UK are closing. But here, what we've seen in Latin America is very quick. It's a jump. So we've seen new customers coming online. So this resembles more of what happened with Asia, where they adopted immediately electronic payments. They didn't even go to the credit card stage, for example.
Yeah,
that makes a whole difference. And from there, I think it's something really important to address are returns. Returns are a big issue all over the world, and because of the difference, it's different in every country, every region. I think in Latin America, we have really bad or almost non-existent return policies. And historically, I think have made customer reluctant of doing returns. And so there is a big opportunity here in order to provide good return experience. And one of the things is that we have in Latin America is many thousands of small shops throughout our cities. Mexico City has tienditas. Santiago de Chile has mini markets. They're basically the same. Locations that can be used to consolidate returns, for example, like Amazon does the returns in the UK through the post office, for example.
But also through the small shop.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
which is fantastic, because you're right. It's given a second life to some of the small shops that couldn't compete with, you know, the big stores or with online. They're actually bringing footfall into those stores. And I don't know, Shai, do you think things like the deposit box, as you talk about technology and e-commerce and e-wallets, Manuel, all I keep thinking of is that a key thing that we all take for granted is smartphones, because that's
I think Denise froze. I'm sorry, I lost connection. I don't know, Denise, you froze?
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, if you could like pick it up, just
okay.
This last
where did I get to? Okay, so I was just saying that I think one of the key technologies that we take for granted now is our smartphones, because that's how we're leapfrogging. You see it in Africa as well. People not bothering to, you know, have things in their home because they just the government's not putting in the infrastructure. They're just leapfrogging into the new technologies. And that's really interesting. And I was going to ask Shai a little bit about, because here in the UK, you see a lot, especially some of the big e-commerce, they have, what do you call it, like, you know, deposit banks, where you go and you get a code and you use your smartphone to open and you take out your package. And I guess you could use it for returns. Do you think that's something that would be popular in Latin America as well?
I think it's going to be very popular, because it's a classic way, it's a fantastic solution to reaching customers, to eliminating rework, and to facilitating a returns process. The same thing is also said for the Manuel mentioned the tienditas, and they can also, not only can they facilitate returns, but they can also act as collection points. So there's so many solutions. There's also reception boxes that customers can use, and you select a code that you can set with your phone. When the delivery person comes, they're provided with the code at the time of the delivery. They can drop off your package in the box, and then it locks. These boxes can even be outfitted with ice packs for the delivery of groceries and food, which is also a booming area of last mile delivery that we're seeing recently. Then there are also, and now this is more expensive, so I feel like this might be a little bit more restricted. We won't see very, very fast adoption of this, but controlled home access, where customers can, using a smart lock and a camera that is linked to the home's Wi-Fi system, the delivery person can come to your house, be granted access into your home. The camera immediately is triggered to start recording. The customer is notified. The delivery is performed safely in the house. The delivery person leaves, and the same thing, they can also leave returns for the delivery person to take away, and you just leave it in your house by your front door, and they take it, and it's a seamless process. So there are so many of these solutions that I think parcel lockers are the first thing that we probably will see, because we have such high density cities in Latin America that I think it's a no-brainer solution for returns and for delivering to customers.
Great. Well, Manuel, Shai, Denise, thanks a lot for this conversation. It was very interesting and very valuable. You gave us many, many insights that I'm sure that our viewers can go and discuss with their logistics last mile teams, so that they can begin to execute and to optimize in accordance to everything that we have discussed today. So thank you very much for joining us in this expert talk.